Hi everyone, Critical Bits here. We have been asked to do a review on the classes for DC20, so we're going to get right into it. Now, hi YouTube, I'm in a YouTube video. Here we go, this is the TLDR of classes for the DC20, so if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, this is my quick take. If you want to watch the rest to actually let me explain why I think about some of these things, stick around, find out, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. Alright. Let's get into it. So Barbarian looks brutal. It can cancel concentration with some shouts. It's got party buffs and it looks pretty fun, and it looks more useful than just rage, hit. It's actually got some cool aura-like abilities. Bard has this aura sort of thing going out again. It's sort of similar to shouts, but it has a lot more options. It's a really cool idea to have the Bard as an entire buffing class, which I think is really dope. And also being able to cast spells differently with this class seems really cool. So we'll talk more about that later. Cleric. It has blessings and spells that interact in a really cool way to add flavor to something at the same time as it being a spell and also casting it, right? So it's like spells plus, but you know, it's not like adding extra spell points to it or whatever. And the Cleric is actually all about healing, which I think is really, really cool. Okay, the next class is Commander. Commander is sort of like a melee bard. Like they have auras and they give out like free reactions and stuff. And as the name suggests, the Commander like controls the battlefield. It's very sort of commanding in that sense. Pun intended. The Druid seems very CC focused, at least from a kind of like, you know, quick peek. It is super naturey themed in its abilities, which is really, really cool. Its wild form is like pretty generic at first in a stat sense, but you can make it look like whatever you want, which is really good. But it gets more customization as you level up, which I think is actually really, really cool. Fighter feels much more equipment oriented and maneuver oriented than like class ability specific oriented, which I like. The class stuff is still there, but it's really cool that you can like sort of pick and choose your weapon maneuver and then add those things together for a bit of flavor. The Monk seems highly mobile and very thematic, which is really dope. They have different kind of stances that you can go into, which gives you lots of variation for the gameplay of the Monk itself, which is really awesome. The Ranger, it's a very survival tracking oriented kind of feel of a class. It doesn't feel as naturey perhaps as you might expect a ranger to, but that's okay because that's not always how rangers are played. And it has all these like hunter strike options, which is kind of like its class feature where it picks different ways to attack and expose weaknesses and stuff, which is really, really cool. The Rogue, super CC class, super lockdown class. It can like do a bunch of different conditions and stuff like all on the one turn. It's really, really cool, and it then combos those conditions to do even more damage, which is actually again pretty cool. The classes so far are all pretty damn cool. Sorcerer has wild magic baseline, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. I think having wild magic baseline is super fun. You know, it probably doesn't happen as much as you'd expect it to, but it is there, it exists. And they still have classic meta magic options. I didn't look like they had so many, but this is an alpha preview, so there's probably a lot, but Sorcerer has some cool stuff too. Warlock can spend their own hit points to boost their spells. What the frigging frig? That is a really dangerous but cool idea for Warlocks. You still have packs, and the packs are still a really strong way to flavor your character. But you can also use hit points instead of mana points as well. So not only can you use your hit points to boost spells just by using your hit points, but then if you want to spend mana on top to boost them in another way, you can also then just use more hit points to boost them even more. Now, I think it's still limited to how many hit points you can spend per thing, but it's there and it's an option. So you can not run out of mana points so quickly, so you can keep making spells. The Wizard has this like very World of Warcraft root of power kind of playstyle where you put this thing down on the ground where you are, and it etches like an arcane circle, and when you stay within that area, your spells do extra stuff, which is really cool. You can like, the Wizard has this cool ability where you can reduce or like increase the mana cost of spells in a cool way to flavor them, and also like you can kind of control the spells differently, which is pretty cool. And classic arcane recovery for wizards, you get spell points faster, and you can use more MP overall as you like on short rests and stuff like that. So I think all those classes, they actually look all really interesting. The only one that I'm a little bit like meh is the Sorcerer, and that's only because I didn't see so many meta magic options in the rules to begin with. So that is the TLDR. Let's go through the actual classes themselves and I'll show you guys. So Barbarian. So I don't know if a lot of you guys know this, but classes only have their main class features and things are only from level 1 to level 10. And then after level 10, from levels like 11 to 20, you basically multi-class, or you get like prestige classes and stuff like that are in the game, but they're not in this book. But that's what I watched on the video. It's actually a pretty cool idea. Basically means once you hit level 10, you've got all your class abilities. You don't have to think about anything else, which is really dope. Yeah, so that's how that works. All right, let's start with Barbarian. So Barbarian is classic. You get maneuvers, you get techniques, you get stamina points, which you use to spend on the maneuvers and techniques, and you get weapon passives from different weapon types, which is basically the new D&D 5e weapon mastery system. Barbarians get extra stamina, they can rage, and when they rage, they deal extra damage. They have advantage on strength stuff, which is pretty normal. Their defense is decreased by 5, but they gain resistance to damage, elemental and physical, so makes sense. You don't have to like maintain your rage for anything. It only goes down even when you turn it off or you fall unconscious, which I think is cool. Then you have Berserker, which gives you, you get a charge type ability, you get Berserker defense. Oh no, it's basically like unarmored defense. And then you get Mighty Leap, and you get extra speed, which is pretty cool. So you can like jump into combat. All the classes have these like flavor features, which are just stuff that like your DM should be doing in the game because it's cool and awesome. Like this one is when you hit a structure or a mundane object with a melee attack, it acts as it's considered a critical hit. So stuff like that. Like that stuff I'm not going to mention too much going forward because a lot of it is just flavor. But yeah. And then level 2 class features are Battle Cry. So you've got these things like it's an aura around you, and you can spend your actions and stamina points to like basically buff your party a little bit, which is really dope. And they have Brutal Blows, which is whenever you hit a brutal hit, which is I think 10 above the AC, or a critical hit, then they have to make a DC, and if they fail, they like basically get winded. They lose all their breath and they lose concentration. And they're impaired and stuff. So that's pretty dope. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, next is Bard. Bard has different flavors for like their source of power. So you can choose poetry, dance, blah blah blah. You can flavor however you want. Then they have some combat masteries for light weapons, light armor, stuff like that. They also have cantrips, spells, mana points, standard stuff. Their level 1 class feature is performance. So you've got different ways you can perform, and that is an aura that is sent out around you, right? So you can basically give everybody +1 damage with a battle ballad, fast tempo music, or some other fast tempo, way of inspiring your party members. We give them extra speed. You can give temporary hit points, or you can end conditions on people. Or rather, they have advantage on those saving throws, and you can end one as well. They have changing a performance, so you can essentially just change your performance, change your aura with an action point, and then you can end early if you want, or if you get unconscious. They are a font of inspiration, so when you use the help action in DC20, you get like you get a really big range on it. Basically, you get a massive range, so you can help people that are ages away from you, and when you aid them this way, you can also give them like extra stuff. Then they have remarkable repertoire, which means you can switch the way spells work. So visual one is through acrobatics, dancing, juggling, painting, drawing, miming. You can ignore verbal components of a spell, but you have to provide a somatic component instead. And then the other way around, you can ignore somatic components and provide verbal components instead. So you can kind of like actually cast spells that are non-verbal in a verbal way, so you don't have to, so you can like not use your hands, or Or you can cut, or you can, if you want to be silent, you can use your hands and stuff instead of using your voice to cast spells, which is pretty cool. They also have Inspiring Rest and Counter Charm, which are pretty self-explanatory. Get extra stuff back on short rest, blah blah blah. And Counter Charm is you can change a bunch of different conditions that are on your party, which is pretty cool. Cleric. Cleric has combat masteries with light weapons, light armor, and shields, and they got spell lists. They got cantrips, spells, mana points as well. Okay, so Cleric Order feature. Stuff can do extra damage or divine damage type when you do a spell attack. You get a Sacred Roll, which you can choose Priest, Scribe, or Templar, which gives you like something extra. So at level 1, you can either, clerics have the option to be like heavy armored melee dudes, or you could be like more intelligence based and skill based, or you could be more like Healy based and stuff, right? You can pick that at level 1. You can pick which one like kind of buffs you a little bit. They've got Divine Blessing, which lets you basically do extra damage or guidance for a help dice, or you can just restore 3 HP to someone, which is pretty big. And then if you don't use a blessing, you don't spend the MP on the blessing, so pretty cool. Divine Omen, so you can basically just ask your god a question each day, pretty much. And then you get Divine Intervention, which works a lot differently, but it is essentially like restoring HP and stuff, instead of just asking for somebody to come down and like punch your enemy in the face and kill them. Then you've got Channel Divinity, which is very similar. It's like destroy undead, or fear undead or whatever. And then also the other version is you can just do damage to stuff as well. But then there is Commander. So Commander has combat mastery with everything, basically like Fighter does. They have they can use weapon passives. They have maneuvers, techniques, stamina points. So they're very kind of melee oriented. They have Inspiring Presence. When you use stamina points in combat, you can restore HP equal to the stamina points spent, which is pretty dope. Then they've got Commander's Call. So basically, it's kind of like Sentinel in a way. When someone is like attacked near you or does something near you, you can like give them a free reaction. Or wait, is it give you a free reaction? The chosen creature can immediately take one of the following actions as a reaction for free. Yeah, so you can give out your party members free reactions, which is pretty dope. Then they have Combat Leader, which is you can grant a creature of your choice a D8 help die, which they can add to their initiative check, so you can give someone else initiative bonus, which you can add to yourself as well, I think. You can analyze a creature at the start of the combat as well, which is pretty cool, so you can kind of tell a little bit better what you're coming up against. And they have Commanding Aura, so they have an aura that's very close around them, so another sort of aura type thing, but essentially you can bolster, rally, or reinforce your party members, which is bolster is help action to aid, and you can do it as a reaction whenever they make an attack. And then you can rally, which is give everybody a hit point, 10 hit point, or reinforce, which is you can impose disadvantage on attacks against creatures as a reaction. Druid has light weapon combat mastery stuff. They've got cantrips, spells, mana points, same with their caster. Their Druid domain is not the same as a subclass. Their Druid domain is like a literal domain, an area that you can pick, you designate it, and then everything like in that area is like difficult terrain for other people. When you cast a spell in there, like it does extra stuff, and the domain space is like it can't be very far away from you, but you can like cast it at your feet essentially, wherever you want. Now while you're in your domain, you have domain actions. You've got a Nature's Grasp, so you can like grab onto something and grapple them, and they can't move or they get slowed or whatever. Then they've got Move an Object within that area, and they've also got Wild Growth, which is like it kind of restores some hit points. Then you've got the Wild Form thing, which is you have your true form, which is yourself, and your wild form, and you can switch in and out of like whenever you want, pretty much by the looks of it, or when you reduce to like 0 hit points. But you can like switch in and out. Yes, the duration remains available for a number of hours equal to your combat mastery, or until Wild Form HP is reduced to 0. So you can like switch in and out, right? You can have up to 2 wild forms at a time, but each one has to have different traits. And if you make a new one, you basically get rid of one of the old ones. Then there's the statistics, all stat block stuff. So it gives you like your physical defense, your mental defense, and all that sort of stuff. You have some natural weapons in your form. You don't benefit from any class downs or anything like that, except for the Druid ones. You don't benefit from ancestry traits either. You got Wild Speech, so that's kind of like the flavor ones. Level 2 class features are Nature's Rest, Nature's Veil. So the Nature's Veil one was the weather type. You can like change the weather, which is kind of cool. So again, very, very, very naturey. And your wild form traits. So these are the wild form traits that you kind of like pick from to gain. All right, Fighter. Fighter has combat mastery and everything, weapon passives and everything, all maneuvers known in the class fighter table, bunch of techniques, stamina points. Fighter basically gets extra stamina points, and then you can adaptive arsenal is really, really good for fighter. You can basically switch out your weapon as part of your attack all the time. Fairly swap with a weapon you're currently building for any other weapon. So you can just switch your weapons around whenever you want. Fighting style, so you gain the benefit of fighting styles when you're wielding certain types of weapons, which is pretty cool. So this is like, if you have a ranged weapon, you get the marksman fighting style on top of whatever else the weapon mastery stuff is. This is when you miss an attack, you have advantage on your next attack with a weapon you make before the end of the next turn. Shielded once per turn. When an attack hits you, the next attack made against you before the start of your next turn disadvantage. So if something hits you, then the next attack's going to be a disadvantage, just for wielding a shield, as well as other stuff that shields get. Then you get Action Surge, Second Wind, classic level, classic fighter stuff. Monk has light weapons, light armor, passives on weapons, maneuvers, so you get all the maneuvers known as well, but you can pick 4 at level 1 again. Techniques, you know techniques as well. There's only, again, same as the fighter pretty much, you get 1 at level 2. Okay, so the monk has extra stamina. When you hit with a melee martial attack that you didn't spend stamina on, you gain stamina back. So that's pretty cool. Monk training, you get offense, defense, and movement. So you get Iron Palm, patient mystical defense, patient physical defense. So you basically just get unarmed defense. And then Step of the Wind, which gives you all these extra benefits. Jump modifier, move faster, climb up vertical things, and +1 speed. Then Monk Stance. You learn 2 Monk Stances, so you can pick from Bear Stance, Bull Stance, Cobra Stance, Gazelle Stance, Panther Stance, Mongoose Stance, Scorpion Stance, Turtle Stance, and Wolf Stance. And they all give you kind of a big, like an idea of what they are. So it's like big hits, knockback, counter, nimble, grapple, multi, quick strike, sturdy, hit and run. When you can spend 1 stamina to swap to a different stance, and you can end a stance at any moment you want for free, but you can only have 1 monk stance at a time. So yeah, monk stance is pretty cool. They all do different stuff. They all do lots of different stuff, which is too much to read, but they all do some, like too much to read out loud. I have read them, but they are very cool. And they are they seem like they would be very satisfying when you got to use full advantage of the stances that you knew in combat. You also have Flurry of Blows. Same sort of thing as normal. Spiritual Balance, so you get key points, and then key points do stuff, but they don't really do anything in this because it's only level 2, except for Deflect, Slowfall, and Uncanny Dodge. That's the only things you really have access to at level 2. But you can see where it's going, at least, right? Like you can see where the key points might be going. And you can spend key points. When you spend a stamina point on your turn, you regain a key point. Okay, so you can spend when you spend your stamina, you regain key. You can use your key to do extra stuff. 5th is Ranger. Ranger has some cool stuff. Again, all weapons, very kind of combat focused. Technique, stamina points, blah, blah, blah. So Rangers gain stamina points back when they do certain things like knowledge checks, or hit something with your Hunter's Mark, or your Hunter's Mark is target is reduced to 0. Hunter's Mark is like a class ability that lets you basically track it and stuff better. The first attack on each of your turns has advantage, ignores damage reduction, and also when you hit a critical or a heavy hit, you automatically grant a help die to the next attack made against the target. You've got Favored Terrain, again, pick from your Favored Terrain, gives you actual in-game abilities, which is pretty cool. And then you have Natural Hunter, which lets you forage, track, or get insight to beasts. Again, very cool interactions. And then this is the cool part, the Hunter's Strike part. You have an assortment of unique oils, tools, and weapon accessories that you can use to modify a weapon or a piece of ammunition when making an attack. You can spend a stamina point as part of the weapon attack and add one of the effects below. So you can make it do extra piercing damage, and they have to save against bleeding. They could be snared, grappled, acid, toxin, flashbang, dazed. So you can basically do a little bit of extra damage and add a condition with your Hunter's Strike things, which is really cool. Rogue gains roguey stuff, same as normal. This time you gain stamina points back when you flank something, when it's affected by a condition and you hit it, and also when you use your cunning action. So you got cunning action, so you can extra movement when you do disengage, feint, or hide. You've got debilitating strike, so when you hit something with a light weapon, they have to make a save, or they are deafened, exposed, or hindered, or slowed too. So like you can pick from one of those things, but they can't be affected by more than one at the same time. You've got skill expertise, so you gain, again, extra skill stuff, which is very roguey. Cheap shot deals extra damage if you're flanking someone and they have at least one condition, which rogues can put on quite easily with debilitating strike, so that's pretty good. You got evasion while you're not wearing heavy armor, blah blah blah. You can spend an AP to half damage against you as a reaction. Sorcerer has spell stuff, mana points. They've got initiative power, so they have an extra MP, and then once per long rest they can spend an MP enhancement without actually spending the MP, which is pretty cool. And you regain it when you roll initiative, so basically every single combat you've got one spell that you can bump up a little bit and it doesn't actually cost you anything. Intuitive magic, so you get an extra spell and cantrip. Resilient magic, so you have advantage on concentration checks. And unstable magic, when you succeed, when you critically succeed or critically fail, you roll on the wild magic surge table. It's pretty cool. Then they got overload magic, so you can spend 2 action points to channel raw magic for a minute, which gives you a bunch of extra stuff, but it also has the side effect of giving you exhaustion if you fail a DC saving throw. You have font of magic, so you get rest points that you can spend to give you your mana points back. So instead of spending your rest points on on like getting your hit points back like usually would, you can spend them in combat on giving yourself more mana so you can cast more spells or beef up more spells, which is pretty cool. Meta magic, you get careful spell, heightened spell, quicken spell, subtle spells, transmuted spell. So basically they're kind of all self-explanatory, which is okay. That's what the sorcerer gets. So like I said, sorcerer kind of feels like it doesn't get as much as much as some other stuff, but that's just the baseline stuff, so it's okay. I'm sure there's a lot more going on. Warlock is crazy. Warlock, you can spend your freaking sacrificial bond, right? So when you make an attack, you can spend a hit points to increase the damage by 1. Sacrificial healing, when you produce an effect that restores HP, you can spend 1 HP to increase the HP restored by 1 to the target. So basically you can spend your HP to give it to somebody else. And then hasty bargain is you can spend HP to get it advantage on a check, which actually feels like the place you would probably use it the most. Then you've got pack burns, so same sort of stuff. There's pack weapon, which has very, very similar stuff to 5e. Packed armor, which is just like better armor, and packed cantrip, which is just like a better cantrip. So it's kind of the same sort of invocation-y sort of stuff. You also have life tap, which you can cast a spell without spending MP, but the total MP can't be more than you could usually spend. And then you make a spell check against a life tap DC, which is you save DC plus the amount of MP where you would have spent on the check. And basically, if you fail, the spell just doesn't work. But if you succeed, then you take damage equal to the amount of MP you would spend. So basically, it's like, I want to cast this thing, and I don't want to use MP. I'm going to life tap. I failed. Oh shit, the spell doesn't work. I succeeded. Awesome, I got the spell off, but now I take all that damage from actually casting the spell with life tap. So, so there's like 2 different ways to spend HP as Warlock, which is pretty cool. I think it's actually really, really cool. I really like this idea of spending HP to do stuff. I think it's amazing. It doesn't really matter so much in 5th edition because HP pools are stupidly bloated, but in this game they're not, so it's like actually kind of interesting. And then you have life drain. So when you like deal damage to a bloodied target, you can actually gain your health back. When you kill something, you gain your health back, stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, Wizard. Wizard is the last one. There are a bunch of spells and stuff, but I'm not going through those because a lot of them are fairly similar. So wizards get same thing, mana points, blah, blah, blah. Spell school initiate, so you gain an extra spell from a school that you choose, right? So you choose a spell school, so whether it's like enchantment or whatever, you pick that spell school, you gain extra spell from that one. And when you cast a spell from your spell school, you also reduce its MP cost by 1, right? So that's super helpful. So it's like kind of like picking your subclass in a sense, where you pick which, school of magic you're more proficient at. Which is really, really dope. MP costs before the reduction still can't exceed your maximum spend limit. You can use this feature once per long rest, but gain the ability to use it again when you roll for initiative. So basically, you can make a spell from a spell school you're proficient in, cost 1 less, beef it up to its like the highest level you could spend, but you just spend 1 less than that for the same thing. But you can only use that feature once per battle, essentially. And then once you roll initiative, you can use it again, but yeah. Then this is the thing that I was talking about, the rune on the ground, the arcane sigil, right? You spend a mana point and an action point, and you have a 1 space diameter arcane sigil, so the one that you're standing in, and it lasts for 1 minute. You choose 1 spell school again, or 1 spell tag, which is interesting, and it radiates the magic of the chosen type. So using the sigil, when you're within it, you have advantage on spell checks to cast or produce effects of the spell school that you chose, or the spell tag that you chose, right? So if you choose like fire, everything you cast with fire, you have advantage on the spell check. And the way that DC20 works is every time you cast a spell, you're casting a spell check, right? So basically you have advantage on all your spell checks, which is really, really dope. You can move the sigil. You can spend 1 action to teleport 1 of your sigils within 10 spaces to your current space. So you can move, spend an action to shift it to you, so you don't have to just cast it again. Although, well, yeah, so you don't have to cast it again because you don't want to cast it again because you don't want to spend the mana point on it, casting it again, essentially. Then there is the prepared spells. So when you complete a long rest, you can choose a spell you know, and chosen spell becomes a prepared spell. Until your next long rest, a prepared spell gains mana limit break. When you cast it, you can increase the mana limit spent by 1. And then you can use this feature once per long rest, but again, you gain it whenever you start another combat. And then during a spell duel, which is like the counter-spelling system, challenges have disadvantage on spell checks to stop your spell. So if you really, really want to have a crazy time, you start off by choosing the spell school that is destruction or whatever it is for the fireball, right? That means whenever you cast fireball, its MP cost is reduced by 1. And then if you mana limit break fireball, your prepared spell fireball, you can now increase the spend limit by 1, and it costs you actually 1 less to do it. So if your mana spell limit is like 3, you can increase it to 4 for that, for being a mana limit break, but it actually still only costs you 3 to increase it to 4 because you've got a spell school initiate in fire as well. So like, oh, and when you're on your arcane sigil and choose fire, you've got advantage on that check as well. And if anyone tries to counterspell it, they've got disadvantage on counterspelling it. So like, it's very much like this is my go-to spell kind of idea, which is pretty cool. Then you got arcane points. Woo, more points. Arcane points you can spend in the following ways. You can use arcane points when you create an arcane sigil to add an extra number of spell schools or spell tags, which is pretty dope. So you can have more than 1 when you cast your arcane sigil. Mana spend limit, so you can spend arcane points on the total number of arcane points, and mana points spent can't exceed the maximum limit. So you can spend your arcane points instead of mana points to beef up a spell. You gain half your arcane points when you complete a short rest. You also regain all spent arcane points when you complete a long rest. Additional arcane points, you gain 3 additional arcane points when you gain a wizard class feature. You can only gain this benefit once per level, up to a maximum of 8 arcane points. And that's wizard. And that's it. So I think they are all pretty cool, and they all have interesting abilities, and that's only level 2. And I haven't seen any other class features. So I think it's very much heading in the right direction. If you found any of this information helpful, please stick around, click that subscribe button down the bottom, and put the bell on so you get notifications when we do make new videos about a ton of different stuff, mostly about helping new DMs and figuring out how to play Dungeons and Dragons. I also have a Patreon. You can go and check it out. It's patreon.com/criticalmits. There's a link always down below. You can check out my stuff on the DMs Guild. I've got a couple of one-shots up there. All that's linked down below as well. Thank you so much for hanging out. Peace.